Everything's here. The music videos, the hooks, the single-take shots of nighttime escapes, the industrial noise, the elegant glitches, the survival screams rebranded into marketable slogans. We know their names, we know their faces, we even know their favorite foods. We've watched their videos on loop. We've dissected their choreos, memorized the bangers, cried through acoustic lives. We've witnessed their rise, their pain, their pride, their forced smiles between comeback stages. So why, with this near-complete map in front of us, do we still feel that dizzying sense that maybe we've missed the point entirely? Maybe it's because Stray Kids never told a simple story. Maybe, instead of a clear narrative with a beginning, a conflict, and a resolution, they built a labyrinth. A world where each music video is a room, each album, a hallway, each member, a misaligned compass. It's not a storyline a la Marvel, nor a fictional universe like BTS's BU or EXO's superpowers. It's messier, more unsettling, more real. It's a shattered narrative, atomized like a psyche under tension. A subsonic heartbeat. A collective anxiety disguised as raw energy. A cracked, tenacious mirror held up to our era. What if this group, so often praised for its self-production, productivity, and global domination, was first and foremost the fragmented testimony of a generation searching for coherence? What if their true power didn't lie in their unity, but in their controlled dissonance? Stray Kids isn't a success story. It's a choreographed enigma, a constantly mutating source code, a mythology that refuses to settle. We're no longer here to chase the heartbeat of the group that's been done. We're here to examine the structure, not of careers, of myth, of metaphor, of glitch, of all the things we left behind in the gaps. Between silences, jump cuts, fan theories, musical loops, and camera stares, held just a beat too long to be accidental. So, no, this fifth episode won't be a conclusion. It'll be a cartography of blur, a traversal of the unspoken narrative, a descent into the invisible foundations of a group that, from the very beginning, never tried to tell their story, but to lose us in it. Willingly, methodically, in a sound and visual maze with no clear exit, and maybe that's exactly where it all begins.
Cappuccino, egg, sharp minds, brewed hot, sure bra. No sugar, no filter. Sip, think, repeat, repeat, repeat.
We know them by heart. Bang-chan, Lee No, Changbin, Hyunjin, Han, Felix, Seungmin, In. 8 familiar silhouettes. 8 distinct timbres. 8 dance signatures. 8 coded expressions engraved into iconic faces. 8 voices, 8 bodies, 8 hearts, as some like to say. And yet, behind the polished facade of a synchronized group, Stray Kids doesn't operate like a uniform block. It functions more like a system in constant tension, a constellation of unspoken roles, fragile balances, invisible burdens. K-pop loves its archetypes. The charismatic leader, the visual, the main rapper, the sunshine matinee, the vocal powerhouse. But in Stray Kids, those roles are glitched, acknowledged, then sidestepped. Replayed so often, they implode. Because more than a sum of talents, Stray Kids is a living mental map where each member embodies a facet of a larger narrative, one about fragmented identity, cohesive tension, survival through creative storms. This isn't a group portrait, it's a decryption, a symbolic, nearly meta-reading of the narrative functions each one carries and what they reveal, not only about the group, but about the generation they represent. Bang-chan, the world on his shoulders. Yes, he's the leader, but not in the usual way. Chan isn't just the group's administrative glue. He's the architect, the producer, the line chief, the emotional firewall, the father figure, the nucleus. In Stray Kids' symbolic map, Bang-chan is the world, the one you can't leave, the one that structures, the one blamed when everything goes wrong and forgotten when it all goes right. His voice is everywhere, his vision unmistakable. Yet he fades into the background to let others shine. He's the gravity holding chaos together. And that comes at a cost. Chan is also the one who cries alone, apologizes too much, doubts in silence. In Chan's room, he becomes the anxious narrator, the guardian of connection. He shoulders it all, even what can't be fixed. He's not the hero, he's the setting, the world the others move through. Changbin, the muscle of the word, a beastly rapper. A shadowy composer, a master of double tempo. Changbin is raw intensity, controlled fury, narrative adrenaline. But behind the thunderous voice lies a startling vulnerability. In the lyrics he co-writes, Changbin is often the one who talks about burnout, the urge to give up, the rage to keep going. He's the group's overcharged heart, the fuel behind its boldest declarations. Symbolically, he embodies propulsion movement, energy that refuses to stagnate. He proves that rage can be structured, pain can become fuel. In this labyrinth, he is the vital impulse, the force that keeps you from freezing when you're lost. Han, the glitched poet. No one enunciates faster. No one manipulates silence the way he does. Han is the living paradox. A virtuoso rapper, an ethereal singer, a goofy facade with the soul of a frantic poet. He is the group's inner voice, shifting tone line by line, erupting in absurdity only to collapse into raw confession. Symbolically, Han is the anxious narrator. He speaks for what can't be said, for performance anxiety, for the weight of being seen, for the fraud syndrome. In the group's implicit lore, Han is the one who often seems aware he's in a fiction, the one watching himself act, doubting every line. He's the system's poetic bug, a self-editing script in real time. Lee No, the silent enigma. He says little. He sees everything. A precision dancer, a veiled choreographer, Lee No always feels a step removed from the plot. And that makes him a mystery. In the music videos, he often plays the role of the detached observer, the silent sentinel, sometimes even the mirror. In S-Class, he confronts his own reflections. In Backdoor, he's among the first to cross the threshold. Symbolically, Lee No is the timekeeper not just musically, but narratively. He imposes a quiet rhythm, almost invisible, yet essential. He's the watchful shadow, the silence that sustains balance. He doesn't tell the story. He reminds it that it needs empty space to breathe. Hyunjin, the sensory scout. Hyunjin is light, not the cold glare of spotlights. Organic light, the kind that ripples, that touches without warning. He's the group's subjective camera, the eye that captures emotion through the body. In performance, he incarnates exposed vulnerability. Symbolically, Hyunjin is the scout, the one who feels before understanding, the one who cracks the narrative open. In Maniac in Cover Me, in every solo he creates, he wears the vertigo of intimacy, like translucent armor. He doesn't lead the group, he makes it inhabitable. He gives it texture, a skin. Felix, the threshold guardian. His voice is a totem. His presence, an anchor. Felix is the inverted gravity point. In the videos, he's often the one who sees, the one who turns back, the one who observes in silence. In Double Knot, he bridges two worlds. In 5 Star, he's the tightrope walker between absurdity and absolution. Symbolically, Felix is the threshold, the space between two selves, between timelines. He's the bridge, the moral compass. He doesn't push. He invites. In SKZ mythology, he's the one who walks with you. The one who says, I'm here. Even if you don't understand what's happening, I'm still here. He's the warmth that keeps you moving. The invisible ink that stitches the story together. Seungmin, the stoic mirror. Soft voice. Relentless logic. Seungmin embodies reason, but not the cold kind. Quiet lucidity. He's the one who stays calm, who observes, analyzes, adjusts. In fan lore, Seungmin is linked to memory, to recording. In side effects, he tries to save the progress. Symbolically, he's the stoic mirror, the one who reflects without judgment, the one who recalls what came before. He's coherence within chaos, the straight line through the noise. He doesn't dramatize. That's his strength. I. Note, the noise of the future. The youngest, but rarely the most naive. I. N has always held a strange place in the Stray Kids ecosystem. Part mascot, part wild card, part revelation. He embodies mutation, that tension zone between innocence and clarity. In the videos, he's often the one who hesitates, who slows down, who asks why. And sometimes, the one who strikes the hardest without warning. Symbolically, I. N is the noise of the future, not yet shaped, not yet classifiable, but already here, already dissonant. He proves the story is never finished, that it still needs to be written. He's the voice heard last, the one that echoes. Stray Kids has never functioned like a perfect machine. They're a living system full of surges, short circuits, improvised repairs. This isn't a standard lineup breakdown. It's a map, an emotional topography, a decoding of why we're so caught in their narrative. Because they're not just characters, they're functions, anchors, echoes of ourselves. And in this labyrinth, they're not here to guide us. They're here to make us feel. And maybe, just maybe, to help us understand that the real group was never in the unity, but in the puzzle. This isn't an expanded universe. It's not a trading card game, not even a storyline. Stray Kids never define the rules of a lore in any canonical sense. No elemental powers, no official webtoon, no Marvel-style transmedia arc, and yet, watch the music videos back to back, and something settles. A subterranean continuity, a visual tension, a haunting sense of narrative déjà vu. As if, without ever declaring it, Stray Kids had built a world. But this world doesn't unfold through dates. It reveals itself through fractures. It emerges from repetition. It's experienced like a myth, not a static one, but something shifting, organic, algorithmic. Stray Kids functions like an unstable collective script, where each MV, each comeback, each live stage acts as a narrative layer, a puzzle piece dropped into calculated fog. This isn't storytelling, it's subtext. And that subtext, when read closely, rests on three symbolic foundations: fracture, control, glitch. The initial fracture, hell, it begins with a fall, a separation, a sealed zone that must be escaped. In Elevator, Stray Kids is literally at the bottom of a building, a system, a world. They wander through daily hell, chasing a light that stays barely within reach. District 9 extends the gesture. This time, the walls are visible. A sterile prison. White. Almost clinical. The members are monitored, filmed, confined. Then they flee. They break the frame. Reverse the gaze. In this sense, the group first writes itself as a metaphor of dissidence, isolation, enforced otherness. The system here is the industry, school, norms, adulthood. And Stray Kids chooses to be exiled from that order. Fracture is the origin point. Not yet resistance, not yet creation. Just the admission that something is wrong, that something must be fled. Mirror drives the message further. It's not only the world that oppresses the self, the image, the reflection, the clone, the double. The group begins to understand they're not just escaping an external system, but a distorted version of themselves, shaped by expectations, fears, and algorithms. This is the entry into phase 2 of the myth: resistance, algorithmic resilience, control. Then comes the desire to regain control, to rewrite the rules, to hack the framework. In Miro, Stray Kids goes on the offensive. They storm a city, climb buildings, sabotage a voting system. There are drones, screens, crowds. They've understood that the system can be reversed, that noise can be weaponized, that excess, saturation, and transgression can become survival tactics. This is the era of mastered chaos. God's menu pushes the concept to its limit. The clip is a display of strength, technical, narrative, sonic. They pose as chefs of a world they craft themselves, using their own ingredients, rhythm, recipe. It's no longer about fleeing. It's about actively creating a counterworld. Algorithmic resilience means appropriating the aesthetic and structure of the system to subvert it. Backdoor becomes an ironic invitation. Come into our world, but only through the hidden door. Visually, this phase is marked by industrial settings, neon lighting, circular patterns. Narratively, loops appear. Recurring motifs, internal references. We enter a closed system, self-referential. Stray Kids becomes a labyrinth they control or believe they do. But what follows is inevitable. Internal disorientation, glitch. What begins as triumph quickly shifts into disorientation. Excess turns to vertigo, energy slips into instability, side effects introduces the crisis. Blank stares, lost silhouettes, in a bus that goes nowhere. The side effects of noise, of speed, of control, the mechanism stalls. Levanter reads like an attempt to let go, to abandon the illusion of control in order to find some kind of self or, at least, emptiness. But the story doesn't resolve. It derails. Double Knot, Maniac, S-Class, Megaversal depict a form of existential glitch. Layers stack, timelines merge, alternate selves multiply, no one knows who's in charge anymore. It's unclear whether direction still exists at all. This is no longer a story of rebellion against a system. It's a story about reality itself falling apart. Duplication, digital hallucination, exhaustion. And within that glitch lies the myth's true strength. Because unlike grand epics where the hero rises again, finds meaning, love, closure, nothing gets resolved here. Stray Kids doesn't return to normal. They keep going. They pass through bugs, overlaps, fractures, and that is precisely what makes the myth both acutely contemporary and deeply human. In S-Class, they become anomalies. Unidentified objects, intruding upon a system they both master and endure. In Megaverse, they fall into a cosmic spiral, no direction, no center. They exist. Orbiting, expanding, always in tension. This myth, of course, was never written down. No member has explained it in interviews. No label has packaged it. And yet it's there. Engraved in the recurring symbols, doors, mirrors, corridors, doubles, inner voices, musical loops, fractured timelines. It's there in the evolution of their lyrics. In the silences between comebacks, in the fatigue etched into their faces when perfection becomes too perfect to still be alive. And above all, it's there in how we receive it. Because this story isn't watched. It's felt. It's projected. Completed. It's a modern myth in the anthropological sense. A collective narrative. Always unfinished. A mirror of our times. Saturated. Fragmented. Lucid. Spent. Stray Kids never offered an escape world. They created a labyrinth in which we recognize ourselves. A narrative that doesn't aim for coherence, but for resonance. That offers no resolution, but a shared vertigo. And if the myth works, it's not because it was written. It's because it's felt. Glitch by glitch. Loop by loop. Frame by echo. Until we realize that what we're listening to isn't a boy band, but a riddle. A language. A fully embodied, fully sensory mental experience. And maybe, at the core, that's the real story.
Tunnel whispers got you sent on me. Mark the times you crossed without a key. No key, no key. Every signal flickers you to me. To me, to me. I don't chase, I just believe. Static hums when you're near. Do you feel it in your mirror? There's no name, just the sound of a presence unknown. promise you don't keep. Every blink I slip deep. Not a ghost, not a dream. Just the hum beneath your theme. In the night while you sleep, yeah. This line never sleeps.
There are those who take the videos at face value, who consume the aesthetics, the rhythm, the gimmicks, and then there are the others, the ones who pause every 2 seconds, who zoom in on the street signs, who read the Latin phrases hidden in the interludes, who link scenes across different eras, who reconstruct timelines, the ones, in short, who chase what Stray Kids never says but always suggests. Welcome to the fan theory labyrinth, where ambiguity becomes method and the absence of canon an open invitation. Because the lore of Stray Kids, unlike with groups where everything is scripted, curated, and sanctioned, builds itself halfway between what JYP Entertainment hints at and what Stay chooses to see. It's not a narrative. It's a field of ruins. An unmarked museum. A riddle without instructions. And yet, fans navigate it with surprising fluency, as if they understood that the real story isn't written in the official statements, but in the cracks of the structure. So what does this labyrinth contain? The unsaid by JYP? Architecture of a designed doubt. JYP never formally communicates about a Stray Kids universe. No series, no novel, no published timeline, and yet the videos are riddled with recurring elements. Why District 9? Why that name? A direct reference to a dystopian film about isolation, segregation, rebellion? Why the syringes, the pills, the surveillance monitors in I Am Not? Why that flashy, threatening political figure in Miro filmed like a cartoonish dictator? Why this narrative structure that keeps coming back? Escape, confrontation, collapse, reinvention. Why, above all, the visual glitches, the omnipresent mirrors, the doubles, the crossing timelines? In Double Knot, the members literally run toward alternate versions of themselves. In Levanter, they cross a door after hesitating. In Maniac, the scenery is inverted. In S-Class, they confront a cosmic, undefined force as if battling an invisible and omniscient entity. JYP offers no explanation, but the motifs repeat, again and again. Enough to generate hypotheses. Enough to make fans feel there's something to read into. And in that calculated silence, in that aesthetic blur, lies a kind of genius, entrusting the public with the role of invisible screenwriter. The fandom as architect, participatory narrative, and modern folklore. Because what makes the Stray Kids case so fascinating isn't just the presence of symbols. It's the way the public takes ownership of them. On Reddit, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, you'll find breakdowns worthy of graduate seminars in comparative literature, charted theories, reconstructed timelines, interactive cards, where each video is plotted into a speculative chronology. Essays on dissociation, lucid dreaming, automatism, generational trauma. One of the major fan theories sees the lore as functioning like a video game, an RPG. Each video is a mission. Every choice leads to a different ending. Side Effects is a failed attempt. Levanter, a successful loop. Sungmin and his camera become a save point, a checkpoint for progress. Hyunjin, by refusing to be photographed at a critical moment, prevents a failed path from being saved. Bang-chan is the leader navigator, the one who chooses the direction, sometimes wrongly. Another prominent theory is the multiple selves model. Each member has alternate versions of themselves in parallel realities. Worlds where different choices were made. Timelines where they never escaped. Or worse, where they stayed trapped. Some fans even say Astronaut is an interlude between two realities, that Hyunjin lived alone in another world before rejoining the group. The mirrors reflections, and mirrored choreographies become symbols of inner conflict, self versus self. And then there are those who read all of it as a psychological metaphor. District 9 becomes a boarding school, or a training center, or a stifling education system. Levanter becomes a moment of awakening, an existential coming out. Maniac and its robotic insects are interpreted as symptoms of dissociation, of burnout, of structural fatigue. The glitches, doubles, and labyrinths all point to fragmented mental states, a generation glitched by the post-COVID era, fragmented by hyperproductivity, social masks, digital identity. This isn't a story anymore. It's a generational diagnosis. And that's exactly where Stray Kids becomes a mirror. When the fandom fills in the blanks, narrative as emotional co-creation, this phenomenon isn't unique to K-pop. It happens in fan fiction, sci-fi fandoms, gaming communities, but here it takes on a different scale. Because Stray Kids never cancels the hypothesis. They don't confirm, but they don't deny either. And the symbols they use are powerful enough, universal enough, to spark deep resonance. Theorizing isn't just play. It's projection. It's survival. Fans who read the videos as dissociation narratives don't do it randomly. Often, they're people who know what it means to disintegrate, to not recognize themselves, to fear losing grip on reality. Those who theorize the endless performance loop aren't just commenting on K-pop. They're talking about the world, about capitalism, toxic productivity, the fear of never being enough. In that sense, the Stray Kids maze becomes a release, a space for projection, a fractured mirror where everyone comes looking for a sliver of meaning. And maybe that's where Stray Kids' real genius lies, not in crafting a coherent universe, but in creating fertile ground for collective imagination. A mythos in flux, a never-completed puzzle, an interpretive landscape that's always shifting, and therefore, always alive. But at what cost? Projection, overinterpretation, fatigue. But this openness isn't without its limits. The more ambiguity is allowed, the more meaning is offloaded onto the public. They're the ones who must decode, fill the gaps. This creates a strange tension. Some fans begin to expect too much, to treat every comeback as a puzzle piece, to demand a coherence that was never promised. And when a song drops with no apparent symbolism, no direct tie to the lore, they feel betrayed, disappointed, as if some unspoken contract had been broken. There's something telling here. In trying so hard to interpret everything, we sometimes forget that the artists are human, that a music video can just be a music video, that a concept can stem from instinct, not strategy, that the narrative weight we assign might be an illusion shaped by our collective need to structure chaos. That's the risk of participatory storytelling, confusing narrative with exegesis. Forgetting that sometimes it's not symbolism, just flickering light. But it would be a mistake to see this as a flaw. On the contrary, it's proof that Stray Kids has touched something rare, the ability to spark imagination, to create a shared interpretive field, to open a story without closing it. Their narrative silence is a language. Their refusal to explain an invitation to feel. Stray Kids doesn't tell you what to think. They show you a door. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to open it. And if you do, don't expect a map. The layout has been erased. The hallway twists. The mirror is broken. But if you look closely, something moves in the reflection. Something strangely familiar. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's them. Maybe it's nothing at all. And that's precisely where the magic begins. There's the group, and then there's everything it reflects. There are 8 figures on stage, and the shadow cast by millions of eyes fixed on them. At this point in their career, Stray Kids is no longer just an artistic entity, it's an ecosystem. A two-faced structure. A stage with 2 entrances, one that leads to them and one that leads to us. And in between, there is Stay. We often think of a fandom as an audience, a support base, a crowd louder or quieter depending on the day. But with Stray Kids, that connection goes much deeper. Stay isn't just a witness. Stay is a co-author, a secondary narrator, an acting force, and at times, a destabilizing one. Because the group chose to break the barrier, because they showed their flaws, because they opened their notebooks, their studios, their tears, their secrets, their sleepless nights, their doubts, because they made us a mirror. And a mirror doesn't just reflect, it can also distort. The construction of a bond without mediation. It all begins with a simple decision, to speak directly. Chan's room is the founding act. An unscripted space, raw, where the group's leader addresses the public without filters, not to perform, to share. No set, no makeup, no time limit, just a mic, a camera, and Chan. The connection becomes personal, intimate, recurring. It's no longer an artist speaking, it's a friend, confiding. This dynamic expanded. VLive, Bubble, YouTube, TikTok, fan meetings, the members talk a lot. Too much, some would say. And above all, they speak with startling sincerity. Bang Chan apologizing for how he looks. Hyunjin crying because he feels useless. Seungmin explaining his perfectionism. Felix expressing his need for authenticity. En admitting his fear of disappointing people. It's not performance, it's fragments of daily life. And there are too many of them to dismiss. With this embrace of hypertransparency, Stay feels involved. Not just informed, responsible. Every emotion becomes shared. Every doubt becomes collective. We're no longer just clapping. We're comforting, encouraging, monitoring. We become part of it. And that's where the mirror starts to blur. Between care and control, the invisible boundary. There's a fundamental paradox in the relationship between Stray Kids and Stay. On the one hand, unwavering loyalty, immense tenderness, a community that heals, uplifts, protects, understands. The love between them is real, documented, inevitable. You see it in their glances, in the fanchants, the letters, the charity projects, the fan videos stitching together moments of life to remind them they matter. But love sometimes turns into demand. Attachment into pressure. Proximity into intrusion. Because when we're that close to a narrative, we begin to want to influence it, to correct it, to control it. A haircut, a misinterpreted phrase, a prolonged absence, a song that feels less intense. A look exchanged during a concert. Everything becomes fuel for analysis, debate, criticism. The public, feeling included, also feels entitled to comment, to regulate, to judge, sometimes to condemn. Some fans go as far as imposing their own moral compass, their own script. They project roles onto the members that they are no longer allowed to exit. Felix must always be the radiant angel. Hyunjin, the ethereal prince. Bang Chan, the infallible leader. The moment a behavior deviates, worry sets in. Then disappointment. Then confusion, as if they're no longer allowed to evolve, to be complex, to be human. The collective narrative. Between interpretation and appropriation, this dynamic reaches its peak in the way Stay interprets the group's work. We covered this in the previous segment. Fans theorize, map, connect. But this process, intellectually rich as it is, carries a side effect: the appropriation of meaning. When every MV is decoded as a piece of hidden story, we sometimes forget that Stray Kids may not have thought about it that way, that not every detail is a clue, that not every line is coded. And yet, part of the fandom demands consistency, demands a message, a commitment to the universe it has built for itself. This creates an implicit pressure, the need to align with what Stay projects, to live up to the interpretation, to continue a narrative they never wrote, but that's now been assigned to them. It's a kind of soft spiral, an emotional trap, a loop of mutual validation, where artists and fans hold each other responsible for a shared fiction. And yet, Despite the tension, despite the sometimes suffocating reflections, one truth remains. Stray Kids would never have become what they are without Stay. Not just in terms of success or numbers, but in terms of narrative identity. It's the fans who amplified the depth of the lyrics, who gave meaning to the gaps, who rebuilt the puzzle from scattered pieces, who drew a thread between performance and lived experience. The beauty of Blur, the strength of shared uncertainty. In the end, what makes this relationship so powerful isn't perfection. It's not harmony. It's discomfort, porosity, the impossibility of cleanly separating artist from audience. It's in that blur that the truth of a group like Stray Kids resides. They are not flawless idols. They're moving figures, projection interfaces. Real people navigating a world oversaturated with expectations, interpretations, contradictions. And Stay, in return, is not just a crowd, it's a fluctuating entity. Emotional, demanding, indispensable. They reflect each other, feed off each other, adjust each other, heal each other, and sometimes hurt each other. But it's in that broken mirror that the heart of Stray Kids lies. Not in the image, but in the motion. In the constant effort to keep going despite fragmentation. In the act of building again and again a connection that never hardens into certainty. Stray Kids never aimed to dictate a story. They left traces, signals, absences, tremors, and it's Stay who turned them into myth, into experience, into language. So no, the group doesn't tell us what to think. They don't hold our hand. They hold up a mirror, sometimes blurry, sometimes cruel, sometimes devastating. And in that mirror, we search for ourselves. We get lost. We find pieces of us again. Because Stray Kids isn't just about them. It's also about who we become when we watch them.
In the shadows where hunger calls, every craving hits, we break down the walls. Days of waiting, skies running dry. Now the table's set, and we're flying high. Flames ignite, we can't resist. This feast is the only thing on our list. Under neon glow,
At this point, if you've listened through all 5 previous segments without checking out, you're probably either a contemporary mythology enthusiast, a stay who's crossed over into the darker side of complex fan theories, or simply a lover of well-orchestrated narrative chaos. But it's also possible and perfectly healthy that a doubt has crossed your mind. After spending so much time discussing symbolic narrative, glitched architectures, implicit functions, and role constellations, aren't we at risk of missing the point? Have we started to forget that we're not dealing with floating archetypes in an algorithmic fiction, but real people? Artists, young men, human beings. And if we're being honest, the answer is almost. Because analysis comes with its own kind of vertigo. It's seductive. It creates the illusion that by decoding a video, linking a lyric to a gesture, spotting 2 visual cues in an MV, we've unlocked something essential, that we've found the real message, that we've somehow cracked the system. But what we too easily forget in this rush to decode is that analysis is an act of projection, not of ownership. This podcast doesn't claim to define who the members of Stray Kids are. It offers no psychological profiles, no intimate revelations, no hidden truths buried between choruses. It talks about narratives, about public strata, about visual and sonic constructions. It examines roles, not souls. There is a crucial difference between interpreting a symbol and reducing a person, and that nuance often gets crushed under the collective enthusiasm of fandom, not out of malice, but out of reflex. We mistake reading for capturing. We believe that after watching 100 Hyunjin fan cams, we know Hyunjin, that by reading Han's lyrics, we understand his pain, that by watching Chan cry during a live stream, we've grasped the heart of the man. That's false. What we perceive are fragments, reflections, traces. What we receive is a representation, and every representation is an edit, a partial fiction. This podcast doesn't question who the members are, it questions how the group is narrated. It's not about their interiority, but about what they come to represent often involuntarily within the collective narrative they help sustain. And that's a vital distinction. Because in an age oversaturated with content, it becomes easy, too easy to slide from fascination into projection, from admiration into appropriation, to treat artists like playable characters, like entities we can manipulate at will within emotionally charged storylines spawned on Tumblr, Reddit, or TikTok. We see Bang Chan as the perfect leader, the one who carries the world, Han as the anxious artist, Hyunjin as the ethereal visual, Felix as the radiant anchor. And by repeating these roles, underlining them in threads or edits, they become golden cages. What began as interpretation becomes reduction. What began as admiration becomes a rewriting of identity. And that is exactly where the danger lies. These members are not symbols, not totems, not incarnate glitches. They're people, with good days and bad, with anger they don't express, with wounds they don't sing about, with doubts that don't fit into any rap verse. Yes, this podcast assigns roles, but only within the framework of public narrative. In the MVs, the performances, the implicit structures running through their discography. This is not an attempt to reveal anything, it's an attempt to read. And reading, if done honestly, must end in withdrawal. It must admit it holds nothing, that it owns nothing, that it merely observed. Nothing justifies confusing a scripted MV with a personal confession. Nothing entitles anyone to believe that a smile caught on stage is proof of emotional stability. Nothing legitimizes intrusive messages, emotional projections, or the assumption that we know better than the members themselves, what they're going through, what they want, or what they should be expressing. This podcast isn't here to feed that illusion. It's here to diffuse it. Artists deserve their ambiguity, their complexity, their right not to be readable, their right to incoherence, to contradiction, to evolving off script. Stray Kids isn't a puzzle to be solved once and for all. It's a shifting, living, sometimes chaotic construction. And every member has the right to rewrite himself, to contradict his past self, to escape whatever is expected of him. If I describe Bang Chan as the gravitational backdrop of the group, it's not to lock him into the role of the sacrificial leader. It's to question the way collective narrative treats him. If I speak of Han as the anxiety narrator, it's not to pathologize his art, but to show how his voice reflects the tonal fractures of an overstimulated generation. And if I describe Lee No as a silent enigma, it's not to freeze him in aesthetic silence, but to highlight how his presence has never aligned with the archetype of a classical hero. These are not biographies. They are readings. And every reading must accept being one perspective among thousands. It's time, too, to resist the pull of over-signification, to stop turning everything into theory, to accept that some MVs are just beautiful, that some lyrics were written without any hidden meaning, that sometimes a glance into the camera is just a glance, nothing more. The beauty of Stray Kids is that they allow that space for interpretation, but it's not an invitation to seize meaning by force. It's an opening, a game, a proposal. And it's within the respect for that game and its limits that perhaps the most honest heart of this series resides. Because if I set out to tell another kind of story, it wasn't to impose a truth. It was to show that narratives live, that they spread, that they overflow. And in the end, what we watch, what we listen to, what we dissect, is not a fixed entity or a group polished into a stable icon. It's a collective experience, a moving fiction, a shared sonic projection. So if Stray Kids is a labyrinth, we shouldn't assume we hold the map. We just need to learn how to move through it with humility. And maybe, sometimes, step out of the analysis room, mute the sound, let them be, without narrative, without roles, without theory. Just 8 boys, just them, nothing more, nothing less. There is no resolution, no way out. This isn't a story that ends. It's a space, a place with no center, no edges, something that keeps going even when everything else stops. Stray Kids never offered a narrative arc. No fall, no climax, no resolution, just a tension, a cycle, a pulse that refuses to fade. And I think that's what I was looking for from the start. Not a key, a room. I could wrap it up like planned. With a summary, a well-framed analytical gesture, one last conceptual doorway. But it would be a lie, because the truth is, I didn't walk through this labyrinth. I moved in. Every morning, I start my day with Thunderous. Literally. It's become a ritual, not to hype myself up to remind myself I can move, even when everything is screaming at me to stay in bed. I could talk about sonic structure, controlled aggression, performance layers, but the truth is, this song holds me up. That's it. It gets me out of bed. When loneliness gets too thick, the kind that wraps around your ribs, not the peaceful kind I put on Cover Me, and I breathe. I don't cry. I just pull a thread. Something softens. It's not comfort in a everything's gonna be okay kind of way. It's more like you haven't disappeared. Just invisible for a while. And that's enough. Escape gives me rage. The raw kind. The, all right, let's go kind. Sometimes I just need to be screamed at. To get out, to move, to not rot inside my schedule. And escape does it better than anything else. And then there's Hellevator, the one I ended up looping for entire nights when I didn't know if I could keep going. That's the track that cracked something open again. That reminded me you can fall and still get back up without needing permission. That told me, without saying a word, this isn't over. It hasn't even started yet. I'm not sharing this for effect, or for drama. It's just that sometimes, after all the analysis, the theory, the structure, I forget to say why I'm doing this, why I held on through 5 episodes, why I wrote these segments like someone drawing a map they refused to fold away. The truth is, this group saved me, not in the dramatic overblown sense, not saved my life, but they saved my presence. They kept me alert, awake, thinking. They gave me something to create around when everything else stopped responding. So no, this isn't a conclusion. It's a disguised thank you, an acceptance. I'm not here to tell a finished story. I'm here because their chaos met mine, and it resonated. They don't ask to be understood. They ask to be held, to be carried with us. Inside this noise, this glitch, this maze, with no exit. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to leave. And since we're here, I'll be at both French dates of Stray Kids World Tour at the Stade de France, the 26th of July and 27. U7 on Saturday, Pit A on Sunday. If you're going too, don't hesitate to say hi. I can't wait to see some of you there. I'll try to share some content from the show on my socials, so if you haven't yet followed me, it's gonna be intense. In the meantime, you can catch every episode of Cappuccino and Croissant on your favorite platform: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Amazon, Deezer, etc. Dive into my books, fiction, essays, tales, raw, political, imaginary worlds that resonate far beyond the page available on Amazon, Google Books, or my Patreon. Listen to my music built like parallel narration, a poetic echo to the questions we're raising here. And meet me live on radio every Sunday evening to share, reflect, and breathe together. The labyrinth continues, and you have a place in it. All right, take care.
Cappuccino, white crock, mines, brewed hot, served raw. No sugar, no filter. Sip, think, repeat, repeat, repeat.